Hey,
Yep.
I'm surprised that one person is knock on something, Jack, that she's not here.
Did you talk to Bill
That one?
Bill Early.
To what?
Bruner
No.
yesterday?
Oh,
You ready, Mr. Todd?
Sir?
I gave him a notice last week
Okay.
when we were here. Because Aaron, I gave you one too, didn't I?
What?
About tonight's meeting?
What you posted outside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wanna call
Smack
Bill?
my hand and I'm gonna kick your ass. If you think I
I
can't,
covered up, the rest of them picked it up.
if you think I can't do it, you're sadly mistaken.
I'm gonna call Bill.
Everybody right?
Make sure you spell that right in the minutes.
Yeah.
It's not in the minutes. Mario,
Let me call Bill real quick.
okay. Thursday. His son's probably got piano tonight, maybe? I don't know. I forget what night.
That was, didn't he say something like that, Aaron?
That,
Something about
he
piano.
did mention something about if it's about this meeting or not.
Did I-
for that.
You got him, Dennis?
Got him? Let's see, 008 something.
Mayor's call.
Aaron.
Bill, will you gonna be able to make this? You gonna be able to make this meeting?
God.
It's about the writ of Hollywood. Yeah, right now. All but you.
Let's see if he was on his way.
What is it, about
Yeah, we'll
2015?
be out, thank you.
I don't know.
We're back in.
Today it's
Lisa's here,
2013.
so's Dan.
What's two?
I mean,
That's all right.
the resolution number.
Honey, I don't know. I didn't know it was a resolution, so I didn't bring a
Okay.
number.
Right. You can't make it. All right.
He coming?
No.
Call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Member Aaron Cook.
Here.
Member Mario Todd.
Here.
Member Donnie Bryant.
Yeah.
Mayor Dennis Carr.
Here.
Attorney Leslie Votaw.
Here.
And myself. And Bill Bruner is absent.
Okay.
I have passed out to you all a resolution, and biggest thing is the consent letter, which is attached to the resolution. I think I talked to all of you individually, but just to recap, we've been talking with Hollywood since pretty much, I don't know, I would say, we started talking probably in February or March, but April, we also talked about it. This is something that Penn National Gaming is doing nationally throughout the country, is putting all of their basically property, real property, into what's called a real estate investment trust. Now, for one caveat before we get started, that building down there, the event center, is not included in this. And that was one of our stipulations as far as this possibly providing this consent. But it does include the boat here, and all of the properties that they own here. Part of that property, if, I don't know, you probably are aware, but if not, there is a sublease that is now being paid by the same person that's paying our true-up, okay? When we get the true-up, what Jackie does every time, there's a $500,000 payment that goes to Lawrenceburg LDC, Lawrenceburg LCD, Lawrenceburg Conservancy District. Right off the top, that comes out because we have a lease with well, at the time it was Argosy, Indiana Gaming Commission, and then we turn around and actually have a sublease with Lawrenceburg Conservancy District. So that $500,000 comes into our coffers and goes right back out. That's the payment that is being affected in this transaction. So that's the gist of it. I did have Lisa here and Dan to go over the legalities, of course, and then also the financial impact or lack of impact, as it may be. So. I guess the Well, I guess, I don't know, I guess, what questions do you all have? And maybe that would be a way to, for Lisa or
Either that, or I can give a quick, I mean, you did a good overview. I can give one that may just be more confusing, I don't know. But I know that my real estate partner, Aaron Dixon, worked diligently through the entire development agreement and all the amendments there too. I think there are 3 or 4 of them. Is that correct? And did a working document that I know was provided to Leslie and really compared all the obligations of Penn National in that development agreement and what might be impacted by that. At the end of the day, what we can tell you, I mean, we can go through all of that. He could do it better than I, but I can certainly go through all that. But what I can sit here and tell you is at the end of the day, the city is going to be in the same position other than one thing. I mean, basically what's happening is the development and operating assets are being separated from the real property assets. So the obligations and covenants and payments under your development agreement are staying with Penn National Gaming. That is not changing. And they will continue, so Indiana Gaming Commission is not Gaming Commission, Indiana Gaming LLP is the entity that will still be paying that, and that will still be guaranteed by Penn National Gaming, as it always has been. As Leslie mentioned, the $500,000 that goes to the Lawrenceburg Conservancy District is a part of that ground lease and sublease, and that is a part of the real property, obviously, that is being split into the real estate investment trust. That was the payment that was being affected by this. What has happened recently is we got the new entity to agree to guarantee, the new parent entity to agree to guarantee that $500,000 payment. So while you're not exactly in the same position, because those are broken out into 2 separate guarantees, 2 different companies. Ultimately, you still have the guarantees of the parent company, and it comes down to what is the credit worthiness of those entities after this split transaction. And so Aaron came to me, we came to the city and said, look, we're not qualified to look at the credit ratings of P&G or the entity after P&G does this separation transaction. You're comfortable with Umball, you're comfortable with Dan, we're very comfortable with Umball as well. So we provided the financial information that Penn National provided to us, as well as the S&P credit ratings, et cetera, and Dan's been looking at that. Now, he's only had a week to do that, but I'll let him talk to the credit worthiness after this transaction, and then we'll take any questions that you have.
While you're describing that, I know the mechanics of it, don't know the particulars of it, but it may be better for the board to know why they're doing this, them being Penn.
It is, they are doing it nationally, and they believe that it makes them, by putting all their real estate holdings into a real estate investment trust, and basically getting it away from just the gaming side of it, it makes them a stronger entity, and it's going to be publicly traded. And so they have a lot more opportunities to do additional things nationally.
It kind of gives them the wherewithal.
A platform.
They go into a bigger pool of money, so as one would say, within themselves.
Correct.
no, there's probably tax advantages as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, probably, and
Yeah.
we were, we're not their tax advisors, so
Right.
we didn't get into that, but
Yeah.
it's certainly a national situation for them.
Which could help us in the long term for capital improvements that they will be able to at least share in on their own.
Well, the
Hopefully.
other thing too I wanted to add before Dan stands up is the Indiana Gaming Commission. It kind of runs into the Indiana Gaming Commission has approved this too, as well as every gaming commission in every state that they've done it.
Operate, that's correct.
So that has gave me a little bit more comfort level because I know Indiana Gaming Commission are pretty stringent with their rules and everything. So that's
Right. And one quick note, Leslie is correct, it does not impact the hotel and event center for a couple of reasons. One, we just said we do not want that at this time to be a part of the real estate investment trust. And 2, they don't own it right now. So it would have to be a subsequent transaction if that were to occur. And if down the road, either party believes that this boat would be, that the hotel and event center would be stronger by being a part of it, then that's certainly a discussion that can be had, but that is not a part of it at this time.
It could be amended to
it could be amended, and they cannot do it without, even once they own it. We have the project agreement that they will not be able to do it without the city approving that and understanding how it's better for you.
I have a 2-hour presentation.
I'm going to dinner.
She's gotta get back sometime.
Would you hide that somewhere on your bill?
You get paid for 6 minutes.
Right. From, as Lisa said, and we appreciate, we were called last week and just asked to kind of speak a little bit to this creditworthiness issue of this transaction. And just to recap, the reason they're doing this is because they have a part of their business that they feel, if it were treated and looked at differently, that they would gain access to different markets and different interest rates for investments and things that would be more attractive to them. But in order to do that, there's some legal things that they needed to go to, so they created this additional, or this situation. Prior to this spinoff is the language that I had read. Prior to this spinoff, their credit rating with Standard & Poor's was BB for PNGI. And in order for that to make sense, we got to talk a little bit about what are credit ratings and what is Standard & Poor's and how does all that work. Standard & Poor's, first of all, is an international company. Their role in this world is to evaluate credit and to help investors in different markets, different asset classes, and different areas to help give them tools that they need in order to make decisions. They have essentially a 22 scales that they can use, ranging from AAA, which means that it is strong credit with strong ability to repay, all the way down to D, which means that the creditor has defaulted on something. And I suppose if you wanted to make the argument, there's a 23rd option that they have, which is to not give you a rating at all. So in this scale of 22 ratings, BB falls right at somewhere in the middle, right? I think it's 12th, a BBB plus, and so on down the line. And that's typical for companies of this nature. They are in the gaming and leisure industry. They have significant market pressures in terms of competition, legislation, economic conditions. So where they are is pretty typical of where most are. After this organization, PNG, Standard & Poor's came out and said that they're going to drop their rating from a BB to a BB minus, which essentially means they're going to slide a little bit down the scale, but their factors are still the same. It's just the weight of those factors. But the GLP,
Gaming and Leisure Properties, Inc.
GLPI, Gaming and Leisure Property, Inc.
That's
They're
the name
going
of
to,
the REIT, by the way. That's the REIT.
yeah, they're going to come on the market at BB plus. And what that means is that they are the highest ranked, that's the highest level for speculative grade investments. Now, speculative grade just means that, typically banks and stuff aren't going to loan, or banks and stuff are going to consider these a little bit differently, and they're going to have to make a stronger case in order to gain access to funds. But the next level up is investment grade. So they're right on the border of that. So as I'm looking at it, and once again, I've only had a week to look at this, I placed a lot of weight on the work that Standard & Poor's did. I also looked at, or at least acknowledged that the Purdue University has done a study, and their study, although we weren't given access to read and we don't know what's in it, the conclusions were that this makes sense, or that this was approved, or I forget what their exact language was, and the Indiana Gaming Commission has signed off on it as well. So
Wasn't that report commissioned by the Indiana Gaming Commission?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And it's a confidential document because it's got financial information not only of Penn National, who, by the way, Penn National consented to IGC allowing us to see that, but the executive director of the Gaming Commission was uncomfortable with that because there was other companies' financial information in it, and therefore it needed to remain a completely confidential document. But the Gaming Commission did request that report from Purdue, and they provided a report that then gave the Gaming Commission the comfort level to approve the transactions.
When we discussed this a week ago, it was described to me that the reason that Penn National is doing this is to allow their real estate holdings to have access and better credit or better presentation in the marketplace. And that appears to be what's going to happen after reading the S&P press releases. So from that perspective, or with all that in mind, if I'm sitting on the other side of this and thinking about, well, what's the risk to my community? Your risks really haven't changed. Your risks are still, will people come to the boat? And will the legislature do something with gaming and wagering admissions taxes. Nothing that I've read, nothing that I've seen indicates to me that this recombination of their company is going to affect them.
Anybody on the board got any questions?
What would happen if, either side of this went into bankruptcy?
Either side, between Penn National
Go
and...
bankrupt or what?
No, I'm splitting this.
Well, there are cross defaults, and part of the consent letter that you're signing, if you approve it, does say that there are certain amendments that will need to be made, and both parties are agreeing to that, and there are amendments in the city's favor. But basically, things that are in the development agreement, but not necessarily in the lease agreement, which the lease agreement is going to end up going with this REIT side. The lease will be amended to include those things so that there are cross defaults. So if anything happens to this new entity, it's also a default under your development agreement, and there are certain requirements and guarantees of the main company on your development agreement. So the same things are going to happen, which was what our goal was, is to put you in the same position, or as much of the same position as we could after this transaction as you are now. So if P&G went bankrupt, or if Indiana Gaming LLP went bankrupt under your current situation, Penn National Gaming has to guarantee all those payments, the lease payments and the operating covenants and that type of thing. So now that we have a split, the lease will be amended to include those requirements from the development agreement in the lease. Therefore, if the new GLPI does something in the lease, or whether going bankrupt or something, not making payments, whatever that default is, that's now being guaranteed by their parent company, and it's also a cross default with the development agreement. So it means Penn National has to do some things as required by your development agreement. So it's, again, the best position that we can put you in and remain in the same position that you are now. You won't be in a stronger position, but you won't be in a weaker position either. We tried to leave the development agreement as negotiated, because it was certainly negotiated for quite some time in the beginning. I can't tell you what all those defaults are. I'd have to go through that development agreement. Aaron might have been able to tell you if he was standing here. But I know there are cross defaults, and it requires the same things afterwards as it does now.
Can't you see, you got a question?
Yes, on the event center, which is not done yet, it's not part of this?
It is not part of this at all. It will remain with Penn National and with Indiana Gaming.
You were on time, she went through a leak.
He hit me.
That's what Jackie just said.
I said, that's what he gets for being late. That question was talked about twice.
Then she beat on me.
He hit me first.
Or did I have a good excuse?
Yes, he did. He's being nursed to his mother, or wife.
Still?
Very good.
Still, but you got the boot off today, and I dropped her off at therapy, so I see light at the end of the tunnel.
Good for you.
I take back my criticism for Mr. Hughes.
But he still can wash hair and set hair very well.
Thank you.
Anybody else, got anything? Aaron? You got anything?
And I do have one question for the city council is aware, and we bring this in front, they're aware of what we're doing, correct? Or not?
I don't think so. I haven't been brought to them anything.
Now,
Matter of fact, they got a vote on this, don't they?
no, they don't. This involves, and here's why, if you read your resolution, the Board of Works, this involves property owned by the city. It does not involve any fiscal payments by the city. Therefore, under the powers of the Board of Works, who has custody of the real property owned by the city, this is proper to come before the Board of Works.
We'll send all the information to them.
If any amendments come up at some later point that involve the fiscal side of payments by the city, then that certainly would need to go in front of the council.
Just want to make sure we're in front of the right panel at the right time.
I understand.
We'll make sure they get the information.
Very good.
No more? You bored?
Yes, I guess we'll go ahead and go through this resolution. If you guys are good with going through with the resolution.
Everybody ready for the resolution? Be ready?
A resolution of the Board of Public Works and Safety of the City of Lawrenceburg approving a letter of consent intent by and among the City of Lawrenceburg, Penn National Gaming Inc., and the Gaming Legion Properties Inc. Whereas the Board of Public Works and Safety Board of the City of Lawrenceburg, Indiana City shall supervise the streets, alleys, sewers, public grounds, and other property of the city, and 2, has custody of and may maintain all real and personal property of the city, all in accordance with Indiana Code 36961 Whereas the city entered into a Riverboat Gaming Development Agreement dated April 13th, 1994, as subsequently amended, the agreement by and between the city and the Indiana Gaming Company LP, and that IGC LP hereinafter. Whereas the city entered into a ground sublease of the property owned by the city dated August 26, 1996, by and between the city and the IGC LP, and that's the city lease. Whereas the city has been informed that IGC LP's ultimate parent, Penn National Gaming Inc., PNGI, is contemplating a transaction which will separate most of its owned and leased real property assets from most of its operating assets into 2 separately publicly traded companies, the separation transaction. And then further so the separation transaction, PNGI and/or its subsidiaries will sell, transfer, assign, or otherwise convey substantially all of its or their owned and leased real property assets to newly formed real estate investment trust, Gaming and Leisure Properties, Inc., GLPI, or its subsidiary, specifically GL Capital LP. Whereas the Indiana Gaming Commission has approved the separation transaction, whereas the city, acting by and through the board, desire to support the separation transaction and protect the interests of the city and under the city lease in the agreement, whereas a proposed form of letter of consent and intent, consent letter, has been presented to the board for its approval, which consent letter is attached hereto as Exhibit A, consenting to the separation transaction under the circumstances set forth in the consent letter. And whereas the consent letter provides that the agreement shall be supplemented, amended, restated, and/or otherwise modified to reflect the transaction contemplated by the consent provided herein, including but not limited to amending the city lease to 1, incorporate into the lease the provisions of sections 203 and 8.19 of the agreement, and 2, incorporate into the lease the provisions of section 2.04 of the agreement. Now therefore be it resolved by the Board of Public Works and Safety of the City of Lawrenceburg, Indiana, that Section 1, the substantially final form of the consent letter attached to or 2 as Exhibit A is hereby approved. Section 2, upon adoption of this resolution, the mayor is authorized and directed to execute the consent letter and approve any changes in form or substance to the consent letter based on the advice of council. Such changes be conclusively evidenced by the execution thereof. Section 3, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after the date of its passage. Passed and adopted this 10th day of October 2013.
If I might make one really quick comment, now what is attached is the final version, and it is actually signed by Penn National. At the time I sent this earlier today before I got on the road, Aaron had added the guarantee by the new entity of those $500,000 payments. That was sent off as I was driving here. Penn signed it, emailed it to Leslie. So there will be no other changes. You see in Section 2, you're authorizing the mayor to approve changes to this, but we would be asking to sign the one that is attached on Penn National's letterhead. So just so that you're aware, there would not be another version after this.
Heard the reading, entertain a motion.
So move.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All against? Ayes have it.
I have the original here.
You got
Give a number,
one
Jackie.
copy. Is that what you
Yeah, it's a resolution, not an ordinance here.
Jackie, you have a number?
No, I didn't know we were going to have a resolution.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That'd be one.
No.
Board of Works?
Oh, Board of Works?
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be one of Board of Works, you're right. It's not,
1/2013.
yeah.
It's the first one
And
this
then
year?
just
Yeah.
sign.
Oh,
Board of Works never does these.
okay.
1/2013.
That'd be a record. I
Yes.
don't think I've ever,
Man.
this late in the year.
Don't jinx it.
Been tough times.
Great.
Just one place to sign.
Just
Yeah.
one for you? Yeah.
Okay. Well, if he's got more than one, I should have more than one.
No, he's just signed a consent
Oh, I
letter.
don't care.
Never mind.
I know.
I'm going to.
Okay,
Here's my
we
sign.
got it.
I didn't have
All
one.
right,
If I
here's the
can,
original.
if we can make a copy of the signed consent.
Well,
letter,
I'll need the originals.
Get it sent off.
Or the original and then a copy. But I can make a copy. Did you hear me, Leslie?
Yeah, why don't we just have him sign two of them?
Okay, that's fine, but I'm gonna need the original,
Right.
and then I can always make a copy,
That was interesting.
and then he can have a
Was
copy.
it?
Yeah. Reading through some of that stuff, it was interesting. Good, yeah.
Imagine that a report was
It's on the
Well,
keeper of the
it-
books,
It's funny
to a
how-
numbers geek.
keeper of the
It
whatever.
would have bored
Don't
me
do
to
it on
tears,
this
but
Well, I'm not saying that, I was
Copy of
riveted,
this.
but it was, I was reading through it, I was like,
Okay,
their
that's fine.
disclosure.
I just need
is
the
it really
original
all that
resolution.
different than our disclosure when we
Some
do
way,
forecasts.
somehow.
They have some different things, and
Board game you wanna talk
Oh,
about?
I hear that Tony came to see you today.
I do have a couple of
Send
comments
you.
He came to me.
of just,
What?
What? That's okay, I
just like
wasn't gonna say
very
that.
quirky observations.
Yeah, I
that
talked to
had
him there.
That don't affect this, but
She worked-
they,
Well, is anybody- anything more
they said in
from
their
board?
email what they thought their ratings were gonna be, and
Can I
that's
take a
not what
motion
they
to
wound
adjourn?
up being.
yeah,
They were below that.
saw that.
Charlie.
And I think they, they reference investment grade, and their debt is, but
Okay.
their company isn't.
What I'm gonna do
So I don't know
is-
if that's what they were